All right. Pop Culture Conversations, episode 5, I believe. Yes. 5. Bone's not with us today. If he were to drop in, he might be in, but I don't think he's going to be in for this episode. So, we bid him adieu for the moment.
He said he was going to try to make it for the second half. Yeah. He's going to miss the review, but make it for the extracurricular fun.
Yeah, but once we get to the extracurricular fun, we're just going to have all the fun. So we're talking about episode 5, Secret Invasion. Quick first impressions. What do you got there, Drake?
So I really liked the way this started and the things that were going on and how it's progressing. And it was, I really was like, had high hopes that this was going to really push it in a direction that was going to be pretty awesome for the finale next week. And
as time went on, you lost hope?
I didn't lose hope, but I liked the episode. It was one of the better episodes, but there's some serious flaws with the episode. Right. And it's not even plot issues at this point. It's bad writing. I mean, really, that's what it is. It's just bad writing. There are certain things that took place that shouldn't have taken place, but we'll get into that more when we go along. I'm going to watch the last episode. I like what they're doing with the number of the characters in the show. All I can say is that collectively we were correct on some of our thoughts on how the show was going to wrap up, and it's looking like it's following that way.
Right. I try to hold hope, man. I've been the optimist. I've been trying to argue for months to listen. Let me try to keep the flame of the Secret Invasion going. Like we were talking about when we were watching it. At this point, I don't think they should be allowed to call it Secret Invasion. Because realistically, they took Secret Invasion came off of the Secret Invasion storyline is where that came from, and it's not even the same thing anymore. The only thing that's similar is Skrulls are involved. They really shouldn't even be allowed to call it Secret Invasion at this point. It's kind of like it's like clickbait. You know what I'm saying? It's like piggybacking. It's like it's just clickbait. It's like that's not what this is about. It's nothing like the comics, which like we've talked about. It isn't necessarily going to be, but. For me, I held out a lot of hope, and I was like, man, this could really get better. Might be a slow burn. Right now, there's still a couple questions that need to be answered. There's things everything's just kind of falling apart. And realistically, it's like a lot of the stuff we talked about earlier, like, Bone is the one who kind of brought it up, that, like, Gravik's plan is stupid. And then as we're watching it, like, it slowly becomes even more stupid. And it's like, well, you could rationalize it as being like, oh, well, it's like if I can't have the Earth, then nobody can. But it's like at the point where now he's telling them his plan is, well, we'll just kill all the Skrulls and all the humans, and the world will just be over. And I'm gonna have the president actually bomb the place where all the Skrulls are. So Nick Fury doesn't want to lose innocent Skrull lives so bad that he'll give me what I want, which will basically make me be able to win and have everything. It's just like you said, it's just at this point it's just bad writing, man. I was holding out hope, like, okay, things are gonna get really cool, and they try to. What's sad is like they try, they try to have the whole Nick Fury suit up scene, but there's just so many spots. I'm sitting here watching this Gaia and what's her name,
Sabra or something like that.
I can't remember. Priscilla's the human name. Was it Vera or something? Yeah. In there, it's like, so Drake, like 2 episodes ago, she had her gun locked up in a lockbox in a bank. Now she has guns everywhere in the house. It's all, so she's always, it's like they play it like she's a badass. She's always had guns everywhere in the house, but I guess like she really liked this one gun, so she locked it away. And she was like, all right, listen, I have all these guns in case I need them, but when I really am actually going to need to draw suspense, I'm going to go get a gun from a lockbox. Like, it makes no sense. It's like, two days ago, you were acting like you had erased all the guns out of your house and you have them locked in this lockbox, and now we find out they're everywhere in the house. It's like the writing is just like we were talking about, like Nick Fury I'm kind of taking all the spotlight here, but it's just these are all things in my head. Like we were talking about, Nick Fury in the Avengers, right? Says we need these. He makes the Avengers initiative, and he says, "I'm looking at you. I should look at the camera." And he says, "We need these Avengers to fight the battles that we can't fight ourselves." And then in this episode, she asks him, Sonya asks him, "Why don't you get any of your superpower friends?" And he says, "Oh well, we can't keep counting on the superpower friends to fight the battles." Cool. So, like, are you? Is that like is that your attempt at character development? That's your character development is Nick Fury starts the entire the basis really. The Avengers is what started the entire MCU, the basis of the MCU. That's what made the MCU. He starts that, and then your character development is he really regrets starting the MCU and everything that we got. You know, it's like he really regret. He's like, it's just cheap writing, man. It's just that's not who Nick Fury was. He was like, okay, listen. Obviously, he's Nick Fury. Obviously, he doesn't fully trust these people. Like, he wasn't giving Iron Man everything. He wasn't giving these people all the keys to the kingdom. But he said he had these people set up to be like, all right, we need these people. You know, he went to when Hydra was taken over, right? Which is just like realistically, it's just the same level, right? When Hydra tried to kill him, he had Captain America working for him. He had Black Widow working for him. He had these people working for him, right? He wasn't just like, no, I gotta go. I just almost got killed. I gotta go off in my secret bunker and I'll fight Hydra all alone. What's the difference here? The Skrulls are trying to do the very same thing. Worse, the Hydra were taking out some people. The Skrulls are going to try to take out all of humanity, so it's only the Skrulls left. But he's like, no, but we don't need any of those people. We don't need their help.
Yeah, but it's worse because at least Hydra was against him. The Skrulls were working for him.
Right.
And I mean, a couple of episodes ago, I was like, wow, this is going to be bad. And the problem right now is that it's something we talked about when we were watching the episode. I don't care about anybody in the show. Not one character. And that makes it to the point where, like, just so I could get myself in the mood to watch Marvel, I went back and binged the entire Loki series except for the last episode. And I realized I'd missed one of the episodes when I watched it. I was like, wow, I actually missed the one episode 3 or 4. But it's like, what has occurred to the writing at Marvel is just really bad. But to like, you made some great points, and I'm going to build on the points you made because you missed a whole bunch of bad points as well. Not by any fault of your own. You can only tear down so much.
It's like, I'm not trying. I don't want to tear down. I'm not trying to tear down.
This episode starts and he's in the hospital. He's in the freaking hospital with the president, and they're like, they asked him something. Are you clear? Who are you? Do you have clearance? Blah blah. No, wait out here then. It's like, all right, great. So he sits in front of the door, and then Don Cheadle comes walking in.
Well,
with
Rhodey,
James Rhodes, comes walking in with
Scrody, as they call him.
Scrody comes walking in with one agent, a Secret Service agent. Is it a Skrull? Who knows? Who cares? If I had been Fury at that moment, I would have just shot him. I would have just killed him right there. I wouldn't have walked up. When he's walking in going, we're going to find, he's saying his thing, I would have shot him in the head and dropped him right there in the hallway. Boom, you scroll, end of debate, no problem. That would have made more sense to me than that whole interaction in the hallway, the whole way it went down.
And he's like, you don't want to die. That's why you're not going to kill me.
I'm like, first of all, the president is on the other side of the wall of the room, and you understand that there's a Skrull that could eliminate him at any moment, and that's what they were either trying to kidnap him or kill him, and now you find out they're trying to kill him. I'm like, I didn't even make the point at the beginning of the episode where he's like, don't trust James Rhodes. But then you turn around and you walk away and leave the president with James Rhodes, the Skrull. And then the biggest plot hole in the entire show is that you have Gravik killing Skrulls. That's it. I mean, that And then you're writing these other scrolls that are watching him kill other scrolls. And one early episode he killed one of his own guys that talked back to him.
Yeah, he
about
killed his second hand guy
way earlier.
at the beginning of the episode. He killed his second in command, asked a question, and then he
No,
blamed
that
him.
wasn't this episode. There was an earlier episode where somebody said something. He just killed him. Am I not?
I think I vaguely remember that.
And then he took out Gaia. At least he thought he did. And then he kills Telos. Now I get him and Telos are opposed to each other, but there's only 1 million scrolls left. At this point, they're looking for a home, and they're looking for someone that is going to represent their best interest and have all of the scrolls' best interest in mind. And he just murdered like 6 or 7 of them that felt strongly enough to turn against him because of some of the stuff that he'd been saying and doing, which you'd already said earlier that it was going to take the scrolls turning against him. And I'm like,
To me, it feels cheap, man. To me, it feels like I said, that's what they're going to do, and it feels cheap. Like, that's the obvious answer they're going to do, is they're going to have the scroll turn against him, and he's not going to have any people backing him, and that's how they beat him.
so then they expect the U.S. to nuke
Russia,
to kill the scrolls.
who are working with
the
Russia,
exception of
supposedly.
whatever scrolls aren't in there, because there's not 1 million scrolls in that place. There's just not. They're not there. I mean,
A lot of them probably are.
you can't expect that place holds 1 million people. That's like a radiated refinery. There's not 1 million people in that building, in that location. There's just not. So, but what that does put in motion is, regardless if they nuke it or not, all of those scrolls are going to get rounded up and imprisoned or interned or whatever word you want to use. Because that's, I mean, if you were the United States government and somebody came to you and said, hey, this is where 1 million or some number of close to 1 million aliens are hanging out and they're in league with the Russian government, whether you believe the Russian government is involved or not, you're not going to let all those aliens wandering around free will doing whatever they want. Now, the fact that Fury had them on the payroll, so to speak, and
but only he knew about that. That's the
and
issue.
since 1995, and using them as like a secret underground police force for him, and that he's basically, you would imagine from the way they've kind of alluded, that's where the helicarrier technology came from. In the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, which we kind of highlighted on, they used Kree technology on that, and they had other technology they've been using that they never really explained where it came from. So now they're retroing that it's all Skrull technology, which is fine. But
Well, I'd like to take a moment because here, see, this is one of the biggest issues Marvel keeps writing themselves. Disney keeps doing and writing themselves into with the Marvel franchise, which is continuously retconning history, continuously adding these characters that have been here all along. But then the issue is the way you write them having been, it just screws everything up. It's like they did that with the Eternals, where they were like, okay, these guys have been here all along, but then they were just like, well, they just didn't really feel like fighting Thanos. Like, okay, no, that screws up the entirety of your plan. Thanos taking out half of the universe screws up the entirety of your plan. But they were just like, nah, but we're not going to even get involved because it's a human thing. No, it's a universal issue, a universal threat. It's the same thing they did here with this, what they did with Captain Marvel. It's like, okay, well, so, but she was the start of the Avengers initiative, and then we don't hear about her for 25 years until she shows up again, and then she's suddenly the hero. Or the same thing they're doing here, where it's like, okay, you have all these people. It's like, I mean, Iron Man in the Avengers movie hacks into S.H.I.E.L.D. So how much does that Tony Stark already know? He basically hacks into S.H.I.E.L.D. Why he's on the helicarrier? Because you remember, he just tells Bruce, like, actually, here's what he's actually planning to do with the stuff you're working on. He just figures all these things. But Nick Fury is the only person who knew about these Skrulls, and he's been able to cover it up this entire time. And they've been secretly giving all this information. Nick Fury is nothing without the Skrulls, is the way they've said it. They said, oh, well, it was the Skrulls that put Nick Fury in charge. It was nothing about it. It was nothing about him. It was the Skrulls that gave it to him. It was the Skrulls that did it.
And when you go back, and I know this show has nothing to do with the comics, and the MCU, the characters are comic book based, but it's different stories retold in a different way, which I'm fine with. I've been entertained by it. I really like the MCU. I like everything that's come out of it, but
Well, not everything.
not everything. There are a few things that I don't.
What
like.
you're saying is we are more glad that there is an MCU than not having an MCU.
I am thankful there's an MCU because short of the original 3 Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, this has really put into on the big screen a childhood worth of stories and characters that I never thought I'd see in that format. So it's a great thing. I love it. But like I said while we were watching the episode, this Nick Fury character and what is going on in this TV show, I got no interest. I don't care. I'm watching now because of Emilia Clarke. And it's a holdover. I'm still
From
Game of Thrones.
You're
Yeah,
just Game of Thrones
I want to see
fanboy.
I want to see what they're going to do with Emilia Clarke and her superpowered character and how she fits in moving forward. And this is obviously her origin TV show. The rest of the TV show is useless. Secret Invasion is the name of it, but it should have been called whatever she's going to be. The revealing of.
The revealing of.
I mean,
that's a horrible title.
But I mean, but that's
a horrible show.
But that's the only thing positive I can take out of this show right now. I'm really glad they brought Skrulls in, and they had them in the Captain Marvel movie, and I like the Skrulls. I've always liked the Kree Skrull kind of conflict. It was something from the comics. I really like the cosmic and the spacefaring stuff in the Marvel and DC universes. So the fact that they did it. But to your point about the Eternals, I mean, the Eternals work for the Celestials, which are like super powerful beings like Galactus and the In-Betweener and the Living Tribunal and Eternity. And to your point, they were just doing whatever they were doing while Thanos killed half the universe. And what half of them got wiped out when he snapped his fingers? You don't know. And I mean, they've had Watchers in a couple things here and there. So you know the Watchers are in there.
Yeah, but they're just like kind of
there to
fanfare.
watch.
They're fanfare. They're just like, oh, this is not fanfare, but they're just like reach back. Oh, from the comics, you know.
Yeah.
They had a little funny scene with Stan Lee. Not to interrupt you, but I think this is you hit the thing on the head. There's two things I want to address. One of the things is and this is just one of the overall issues they have, which is nobody cares. Disney, nobody cares. Like everything they're doing, nobody cares. This is like I'm scrolling through like Instagram, you know, the post they're putting up is like they're talking about the Marvels, and it's like nobody asked for this. You know what I mean? Nobody, like there's a lot of other characters. Like, you know, somebody who Rob from Comic Explained was getting some heat on Twitter because he was like, everybody's like there are a lot of more strong female characters in the Marvel universe that they could have picked than Kamala Khan. And it's like, I don't have an issue with Kamala Khan, but realistically, when nobody reading the comics, when you mentioned the name you mentioned a strong female character, no one was thinking Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. There's a lot, but it's you just have picking these characters nobody cares about. And then the worst part is what you're doing with them. Because here's the thing, and this is what they might want to say. Well, it's, you know, they try to say all these things like, well, it's not for you, and you don't. Well, okay, maybe it's you and I don't care, but here's the thing, a lot of people don't care. And here's the thing, you can make us care. This is the thing. How many times have characters been picked who people didn't care about, and they were written in such a way that people, I mean, if you look at the Arrowverse, which, they screwed up a lot, but the first 2 seasons they did with the Green Arrow, nobody cared about the Green Arrow. But when CW took over, the first couple seasons they did with the Arrow, where he was this cool vigilante, it made them care about him. Later on, they screwed it all up. But this was a character, it's like the Green, nobody cares about the Green Arrow. But, you know, I mean, you can pick all kinds of characters you can pick.
It's CW, right?
Yeah.
So they did Arrowverse, they did Supergirl, and they did Flash. And they did the other one.
Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow, which I didn't really watch that one. And Green Arrow, I watched all the crossover episodes with Flash and Supergirl. But the Supergirl and the Flash shows, and what I watched at Green Arrow was great.
At the start, yeah. And obviously they screwed up later.
I'm like, the Flash show, I kept going, it stayed pretty great.
For a while.
And I just say that, I mean, they built all that off of the success of Smallville.
I don't want to get super deep into that.
Right.
I just mentioned that because, listen, they also had a lot of issues, plot holes, and mistakes.
Of course.
And junk. But I wanted to get into the point. I mentioned the Arrow specifically because, like, Green Arrow was, like, Flash has been a fairly big character. Green Arrow was not a huge character. Green Arrow was not a very interesting character. And they made people care about them. They've done this a lot before with a lot of characters. How many movies have like just been written? Like, that's what movies are, right? Like most movie, taking away an IP, when people create a movie, Rogue One, nobody cared about this. It was this throwaway dialogue about these Bothan spies, and they turned it into a movie that people loved. These are characters nobody knew about. Nobody, Jyn Erso, all these, they didn't exist. Nobody cared about them, and they made characters that people loved because of the way it was written. And this is the issue with Marvel. They're not writing characters, or they're not writing characters that people give a damn about. Nobody cares about your characters, man, and that's the problem. When nobody cares, then there's nothing at stake here.
So, really, what's hurting Marvel now is the lack of having the X-Men. Being able to do stuff with X-Men. And now that they're talking about is what be 2028 to 2032 when they get all this mutant stuff going, and the Deadpool movie next year is going to really kind of start it. I think if I'm Marvel, I'm jumping that.
See, Drake,
I'd jump in that up front. I mean, we did that top 5. Have we released the top 5 female character video?
It was released in the last episode.
So there were characters that I didn't even mention that I care about more than some of the characters that Disney and Marvel are pushing. Like,
yeah, listen, listen, it's a sore subject. Here's the thing, Drake.
Like, I'm gonna just go on down one quick path here, but it's Marvel. Everybody and their brother wants Hugh Jackman and Wolverine in the MCU. It's been like the rumor mill for like the last at least 5 years, if not more. That last Logan movie with Professor X and Wolverine and the Laura Kinney character, which is supposed to be X-23, his daughter through like DNA tampering. I mean, they had her as Wolverine in the comics for a minute. Now she's a character named Talon. I would love to see X-23 or Talon or Wolverine, whatever you want to call her, put her in the MCU. She's not come out in a film except for that other one. Was that part of Columbia or Sony or whatever holds the X-Men?
I believe it's but Universal that has X-Men.
Yeah, but don't they have all that now?
Well, there's agreements because listen, obviously, as we understand, Hugh Jackman and Wolverine is in Deadpool 3. But here's the thing, because all of that doesn't matter, Drake, because at the end of the day, you have to fix your writing and what you're doing with the characters first, because you can screw it. Like you should listen. If they got their writing, their directing, all of the stuff figured out, here's the thing, they're not listening, and this was frustrating. I'm scrolling through Instagram. And the Marvel, I think it's the Marvel or is it Disney? Their channel, I think it's Marvel. He's posted this, continuously they'll post like every week, and they post all these things about Secret Invasion. One of the things they post, right, is these clips of like, and they're like, if you're talking about Secret Invasion instead of you're talking, we're listening, and it's like, no, you're not, because here's the thing. All of your clips that you post in this picture are people talking about how they love the show. And I'm going, from the first episode, a lot of people were saying, listen, this is not that great. And you weren't listening. And you weren't listening from the beginning. It's been occurring for a long time. All you're listening to is the people that tell you did great, the people that are kissing your ass or backing you up, or just, that little group that says you're doing great. Anyone who gives you constructive criticism, you're not listening to. So you're continuing to make crap. Oh, yeah. Right? And so you can take all your X-Men IP and put it in a movie, and if you have a bad writer and people who don't care about writing great stories and they care about whatever they're doing, whatever the reason is that we can't get great writing, whatever it is, all right? Because there's a million different ways you can go. Because some of it's obvious, but some of it's like this. Like, it doesn't seem, it's just not, because here's the thing about Secret Invasion, right? This is the saddest thing. It's one of the first things they've done in a long time, which isn't just clearly shoving agenda down your throat. And it isn't for the purpose of pushing what somebody else believes. True. And yet the writing is still crap. So that's what's sad. It's not annoying, like, because you're only pointing a message, but it's crap.
That's an amazing point. And I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it. From Disney, there's so much agenda based writing and just features that this one truly is there's no agenda. It was a spy show that I think that they thought this was really great. It started when Telos told Gaia what his plan was. And then the way Gravik has executed his plan. Now, at the beginning, when Gravik's plan was, we're going to start a nuclear war, We're going to have the humans destroy themselves, and we'll be here to take over the world, and whoever's left will be in control. That made sense to an extent, because you need a planet, and if you can get rid of a bunch of the populace that lives there, they're not going to be too concerned about an alien race that's now living in certain parts of the world. But then the way he decided to execute his plan, he had pieces and people in places where he could have done what he wanted to do and pulled it off. But it was like, and that's the other thing. Like this episode, we kept talking about, I was really waiting to see a flashback scene like we talked about, where did James Rhodes become a Skrull? When did they replace him? Did they kill him? Was it prior to Endgame? Was it after Endgame? Most people are saying it was probably after Endgame now, just to keep the base back stuff in without people totally losing their minds. But
plus it seems that Gravik was still doing Fury's bidding, because after Endgame he was the one
that
who
went
was sent
to
get on
harvest.
the harvest.
Right. So, but it's like they had multiple opportunities in different episodes of this show to turn a corner and really do something special, like a flashback. You could have had Rhodes getting out of the armor at the Avengers compound, and you could have had Coulson walk in, and Coulson walk in and go, "Agent Rhodes, I need to talk to you," and he'd be like 3 or 4 guys deep, and they trank him, and they all end up being Skrulls, and they drag him out. Because Coulson is not even Coulson anymore. The Coulson that last time he saw was an LMD, because his body had died and he was in a different body. And he was already checked out. So at that point, but that would have been a cool callback. It would have been pretty easy to do. It wouldn't have been super expensive. Right. You could have had something real quick and brief. You could have seen like just the War Machine armor there. You didn't even have him in it.
Right.
And they trank him and take him. And that's all you need to see. And you just know when Coulson turns around, and as he turns around, he changes to a Skrull, and it's like, all right, plan's in motion. Let's get out of here. Boom. And he hits a button and turns all the cameras in the Avengers compound back on. Something simple. It could have taken like 30 seconds. It could have been an end scene clip. But, the problem is, at the beginning of the MCU with those Iron Man movies and Jon Favreau coming in, Jon Favreau was a fan of Marvel Universe, and he really loved it. And he had control and was really the architect of the MCU for the first few years, and really architected it all the way through to where it was. And now he's playing over in the Star Wars genre, which is fine. What he's done over there is great. I like it. But the problem was there's nobody left over on the Marvel side that is a fan or that cares about Marvel and can navigate all this stuff, all this material, and pick what they need to do.
In the end, just kind of tie this up so we can go on, because I don't want to stay here and bash Marvel too much.
No,
I think the biggest thing
Marvel.
is, I think there's aspects of just the feeling of filling space. I think the biggest thing is stop thinking about money, start thinking about writing great stories, and that'll bring in the money. Bob Iger just came out that recently, was talking about the Star Wars, the Lucasfilm stuff, and he was like talking about not doing as many series and all these things. And it's like, but the issue isn't that you're doing too many series. The issue is that you're doing these series that are all filler content. You're just making these things to fill space between movies. Oh, there's no movies going on. We need some series to be going on. And this is not like I'm talking about Marvel and Disney as a whole. You're making all these throwing all this stuff together because it needs to. There's no movie coming out. Everything's being postponed, so we need to have stuff coming out. And these series that there's just. There has to be some sort of quality control. That's what it is. At the end of the day, I don't want to get too deep in it because we got to get to the top 5.
I got one more.
But somebody's got to have some quality control.
So I got one more thing, Doc, before we wrap up this segment. So the comment about the content they're making is just filler. It's not even filler at this point. It's like they're searching for a great story. If I asked you, Doc, if I was Iger, it is Iger, right?
Yeah, Bob Iger.
If I'm Bob Iger and I'm sitting there at Disney and I'm looking at Marvel as a whole and I'm looking at numbers and ratings going down and not what I'm looking for, and I call down to, and you're one of the guys working down in the R&D department where we're developing the next set of stories and where we're going to go with the MCU. And I call you and go, hey, we need some stories. We need something that's going to sell. Now, as a fan, looking in from the outside, there's like 40 years of printed material with all these great stories. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel every time we put out another this show or we do this? Granted, I understand they did what they did for what they've done, but there are some pretty great stories that they could tap into if they really wanted to. It's not like they have to go create something out of nothing.
That's true. I think there's things to be considered about budget, but the issue is not understanding the spirit of the stories. Because like if you took Secret Invasion, if you read Secret Invasion and understood the spirit of Secret Invasion, right, it would be nothing like what this is. Because the spirit of Secret Invasion, like if I was doing Secret Invasion, I would have followed more along the Nick Fury tie-ins to Secret Invasion, where he's in the background while all this invasion's going on. He knows what's going on. Nobody would believe him. He's hunted like nobody. Like he's ousted. They want to find him and find out where he is, and he's getting people together and getting things together to deal with this. That's the biggest thing. Is like when you're talking about this is missing the entire spirit of the story, which is, who do you trust? That's the underlying theme. That was what it was called. Secret Invasion. Who do you trust? That was the prelims. Who do you trust? We already like people. I didn't believe it at first, but a lot of other people knew Rhodes was a Skrull from the beginning. There's been very little surprises here.
I thought the SAS chick was a Skrull, and then when she ended up not being a Skrull, I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. Because when her and Fury are talking, and she's like, well, seems like damn near anybody could be a Skrull. And I'm like,
are you?
So I got one for you. I'm going to leave it, and then I'll let you take, and we can move on. What if Fury's been a Skrull the whole time, and the person that came down from Saber was a Skrull and not actually Nick Fury?
I mean, that's possible. It could open up with him coming down from Saber and being like, there's two Furies here. That's possible.
Well, maybe what I'm saying is because Fury didn't want to come down.
That would be the
biggest
Skrull. But here's the thing. At this point, I don't think that their writing's great enough to do something as big of a swerve as that. And
that would actually be cool, and you'd be like, oh man.
But then you only have like 30 minutes, 40 minutes to iron that entire thing out. Unless you're going to do a second season.
You do it in the Marvels. This Marvels movie thing.
Yeah, but that's not going to. But let's go ahead and take a short break, and then we'll jump back to today's top 5.
All right.
All right, and we're back for the top 5. And guess who's back here with us for the top 5? Just guess.
Bone made it.
He made it.
Yay, Bone's here.
All right.
Welcome back to the show. Top 5. So
I would clap, but I might miss with one hand.
Yeah. His accuracy is really off. So today's top 5. You got something to say, Drake? You
Clapping, talking to you is like clapping with one hand.
I don't get that reference.
Caught in the mosh. Caught in the mosh.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
This
Music
week's top,
reference.
This week's top 5 is the top 5 Star Wars characters. The parameters are only from the movies and the TV show. No comics, all that expanded universe, games, books, all that. Just movies or TV show adaptations, which includes the Clone Wars and Rebels, the animated adaptations. So without further ado, we're only allowed 3 honorable mentions. Remember that.
Is this animated and?
Yes.
Oh, that I wasn't aware of that.
So you weren't adding the Clone Wars in?
I wasn't adding any animated stuff.
Yeah, I just figured that out, so I changed my list.
That would change.
Okay, just think about it while I go through mine.
Well, you think about yours.
I say we don't include animated stuff. And we do that for expanded universe later.
None of the characters
we're
all the characters in mine
include animated stuff.
But here's the thing: there's not really many characters in the animated that aren't in the movies. There's a couple, but
all right, my list still applies.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do that. We'll cut out the animated that the Clone Wars and Rebels counts as expanded universe. So only the movies, right? Basically, that's what we're saying. Only the movies.
Movies and regular live action.
Live
TV
action.
shows.
So this is, well, addendum it. It's the top 5 Star Wars characters that have been portrayed in live action by real people. So, Bowen, you want to start with your top 5?
I do want to start. So, number 5. Oh, man. Number 5. Number 5 is one that does not qualify. So, I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to go with Han Solo for number 5. I just love that ship. And anybody who piloted that ship, I thought that Harrison Ford did a great job. I mean, notwithstanding the last 3 films, but well, I'm not sure how far he made it. Anyway, so Han Solo, I really liked. I really enjoyed. I thought it was excellently acted, and I just think the character arc of Han Solo was very interesting. So number 4, I'm going to go with Anakin Skywalker, and I know there's a lot of people out there who really love Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is a great character, probably the best villain to ever walk the screen.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And so I can't take anything away from Darth Vader, but I really think the way that Anakin was manipulated and the heart that he had and the struggle that he had, it's like someone I can identify with. And I just think that Anakin Skywalker was a tragic but amazing individual. And he did become Darth Vader. All right,
spoiler alert.
Number 3, we're going to go with Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka. Ahsoka would be higher, but once you see number 1 and number 2, you're going to understand why that Ahsoka can't beat those 2. I just love. Now we're not going into the Clone Wars and the other shows, but just the character of Ahsoka to me is, I don't know, it's just super cool. It's the coolest, one of the coolest new characters that's been created in the last 20 years. Number 2, which was an animated series but did show up in Andor, and this is where Drake just gave me a look because he knows where I'm going with this. Chopper.
He showed up in Andor?
Chopper was in Andor, not Andor. Which is the movie? This is where Bones' memory fades.
Rogue One.
Rogue One. He was in Rogue One. There's a hangar scene where they actually they're calling for General Syndulla over the overhead, and then Chopper rolls by. Chopper rolls by. It's an amazing. So I just love Chopper. I can't really talk about much about Chopper's behavior because all you do is see him roll by. But that was a cool looking droid when he rolled by. Am I right?
No, you can listen. You can add your extensive knowledge of him counts into why you like him, but it's just that he has to be.
Well, I like the fact that Chopper was so loyal to Hera. And I like the fact that he was such a jerk in the first couple episodes. I mean, he was a jerk. And then he started to kind of change his ways, and I'm not sure how much droids are, how much they feel or how sentient they are, but I just love Chopper. And number 1 only beats Chopper because, and this is where
it's obvious.
Where Doc is like, yeah, I know this is R2-D2. And it's like, so my initial attraction to R2-D2 as a kid was that scene in the valley whenever he's by himself. C-3PO disses him and they separate. And the Jawa comes up and shoots him. And he goes, and he falls over. And as a kid, I would just take R2-D2, stand him up and just push him over. I did that hundreds of times. So, but it's the idea that R2 was involved in all of that stuff from the very beginning. He was there in every, in every capacity. And I just think the little blue droid's just super cool.
I must say, not unexpected. Not unexpected at all. There was not once where I was shocked or appalled.
Well, I had to change it because
what was the number 5 that before Han Solo?
Number 5 was it was Kanan Jarrus.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, interesting.
You
know, you're able to bring you could have. What's too late?
Oh, the honorable mentions.
Yeah. I usually do those first.
Let's do the honorable mentions at the end. I'll let you guys do them, and I'll throw mine out. I don't want to take away from you.
Go ahead, Drake. You want to go or you want me to go?
You go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to be different. Listen. I'm going to start with my honorable mentions because this will explain why I'm on my list, right? The first honorable mention. What is my first honorable? Okay. First honorable mention has to be Luke Skywalker. And this is, listen, obviously y'all are much, 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 much older than me. That was meant to be a diss. I'm sorry. I'm a prequels kid. So, Luke, listen. Okay, first off, we're all adults here. So we can all admit that the sequels don't exist. They never existed.
Which ones are you talking about?
The sequels, the ones that don't exist. If you remember the deleted scene, in episode 9 where Luke Skywalker wakes up and it was all a dream. You remember that deleted scene?
I do remember.
It was deleted so early it was never.
It's
even
one
written.
of the few things I can't remember.
Yeah. But so I didn't get to listen. Outside of all that, Luke Skywalker is really awesome. He's really cool. He's amazing. But I just didn't have the connection with him because I was a prequels kid. I didn't really have the connection with him. I didn't really get super into him. And then the other two honorable mentions are Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. And that's because obviously it's more like you're Mary Jane. They have to be above the list because they're the two of the greatest ones ever. But I don't want them to take up 2 spots on the list. I want the list to spotlight other characters. This is my favorite characters. Darth Vader is the greatest, I think, in the argument of the greatest movie villain ever. He's just that awesome. And then Emperor Palpatine. I mean, you've written a character that has 0 redeemable qualities. He's just pure evil. This is just evil. That is the greatest embodiment of evil. There's very few characters of just evil. And not doing because there's the cheap evil. It's he's evil because he murders children. No, he's just evil because everything about him every atom of him is evil. He's the embodiment of the dark side. Really cool, amazing writing, and all of that. But they're not my favorite characters. These are my top 5 favorite characters. So, that out of the way. Number 5 is going to be Grandmaster Yoda. He's just cool, man. He's adorable, but he's a beast. And here's the thing about Yoda. He's a beast, man. 1,000 years old almost. Incredibly powerful. I mean, he's just really, he's just really awesome. He's just cool. He's Yoda. He's just this little guy, but then he's when he goes beast mode, it's and he's got all these powers. And when he's just in that with Count Dooku and with Emperor Palpatine, he's just got that. He's got it comes out a little bit every once in a while. He's got a little bit of sass, but he backs it up. So he's this peaceful guy, but then he's yeah, but you still got a lot to learn, buddy. I trained you. And it's oh, you think you're so powerful, Emperor Palpatine. Number 4 is gonna be Count Dooku. Count Dooku is a beast, man. I love that actor. That guy, he passed away. First, that actor overall, Christopher Lee is one of the coolest people, one of the most badass people ever to live. I tell this story all the time, but this is a little sidetrack, but when he was in Lord of the Rings, this dude actually killed people. He was in Lord of the Rings. He got stabbed in Lord of the Rings. And the director came to him and was trying to tell him how to act it out. You need to act it this way. And he was no, I've stabbed people before, and this is how people sound when they're stabbed. That's not how they sound. That dude was he was like James Bond. As a matter of fact, he was part of the inspiration. He was friends with the guy who created James Bond, wrote James Bond character. He's just a really cool actor and he had a crazy life. But overall, his character. Listen, Count Dooku is the one Jedi that Emperor Palpatine worried about. Because Count Dooku, while all the Jedi, he was the master of Form 2, which is to fight other lightsaber and force wielders, right? He was a master of it was lightsaber dueling. All the Jedi had left because they're the Sith are gone. It's been 1,000 years or whatever. He was the one who Emperor Palpatine worried about, and that's why he took him and made him his apprentice, because he was the one that he had. It was all right, this guy, because he had some serious skills, and he's just this regal character, this really cool guy. He's a bad guy obviously, but he's just awesome, man. I might be a little because I like the actor as well. Some of these you'll find that. Number 3 is going to be Mace Windu. Samuel Jackson. He did not die, by the way. He's still alive. I believe that's just canon because I said it is. Actually, technically, George Lucas said he was alive because Samuel L. Jackson asked him, "Can Mace Windu still be alive?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." but I mean, this guy. Listen, all the abilities this guy has. Shatterpoint. He beat Emperor Palpatine in this lightsaber duel. He created his own lightsaber form, which is basically the forbidden lightsaber form that the Sith use, and he was the only guy able to use it. The other guy who he created it with turned to the dark side, and he was the only guy who was able to not until you dig into the expanded universe know about him. He walks the dark side. He's more of a gray Jedi, and he has that. That's kind of the same, and that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why he never really got along with Anakin is they have the same similar qualities where they have that thing, but he has that control and that ability over it to turn it back around and to turn you, and he can turn your strengths into your weaknesses and turn it back around on you. He's got these really cool abilities. And Samuel L. Jackson, like one of the greatest travesties of is he doesn't have an MF moment. He doesn't get to say his famous line in Star Wars at some point, which he should have. And as I said, he's still alive. I've decided he's still alive. That was 3, right? Number 2 is Qui-Gon Jinn. I was episode 1. Listen, a lot of people don't like episode 1, and I understand. It's, nobody really cares about the complexities of Galactic Trade Federation stuff. But when I was a kid, like Qui-Gon shows up, Liam Neeson, really cool actor. He's just like the hair, just the look. I was like, that's a Jedi. That makes sense. That should be what, like, he's just this big, powerful, strong guy. This really cool character. Everyone who knows anything about Star Wars knows if he hadn't died, like, he would have saved Anakin, and Anakin would not become Darth Vader, and they would be. He was the guy. He should have been. He should have stayed alive. And what's the saddest thing is everyone else survives from the same wound that he dies of. But he's the guy who taught Yoda and Obi-Wan how to survive into the Force, right? He's that guy. He's the guy. He was just a cool guy. And when I was a kid, like after that, I would read the Jedi Quest. I think it was called series. Where it was the Obi-Wan and young Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and their stories, and it was these books, and it was just like he was just this like I love that character, man. And one movie stole our hearts. Liam Neeson, Plus, I mean, when you add his other stuff, like if we had like a Taken style Liam Qui-Gon Jinn movie. Anyways, number 1 for me is the Negotiator, General Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Listen. When I don't know what it is, okay? Because honestly, a lot of people, are big into Anakin Skywalker, and a lot of them, I know there's people out there who are like Anakin Skywalker, and they kind of identify with Anakin. I don't identify with Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know. Just as a kid, before I even knew who the character was, when I heard his name as a kid, I was like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's a cool name. And just something about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've always loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've always rooted for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, this guy, first, let's just be clear, he's a badass. All right, he is. Mace Windu called him the Form 3 master. He's the master. He mastered. Here's the thing about Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's actually not that powerful in the Force. Like, as compared to the others, he wasn't actually that. His midichlorian count wasn't really that high. He trained himself to become that powerful. He worked his ass off to become that powerful. He mastered the form that, because of his mastery, he was the mastery of Cerriso, Form 3. He was able to withstand far more superior Force users and duelists. I mean, Anakin was stronger than him in episode 3, and he was able to beat him with his ability, with the mastery of the Force, and all the work he had put in for focus and all those things. I think I've been a bigger one defender. I think in my head canon, he's the most powerful Jedi of all time, even though he's not. You're wrong.
Head canon?
In my head canon, Obi-Wan Kenobi is, even though I know that that's what was written, in my head canon, I go, no, Obi-Wan Kenobi is like a Force 12 to 18 million. He's just the best. Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's just the god of Star Wars. I think he gets a bad rap. Listen, Qui-Gon's the one who chose him to take it over. A lot of people give him the bad rap and say, well, if Obi-Wan had done his job better. But I think then, there's a lot to be said there with the storyline of how, when you later on, everything he has to go through after, when he's sitting on Tatooine, now basically having to come to the understanding that everything he was taught and trained is wrong. Right? That is all wrong. I love that character. I think he was a cool guy. I think he's the man. He's the guy. Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know what it is. I've always loved Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I knew as your list was going and that you were a prequels kid, I was like, it has to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. It has to be.
The Negotiator.
So I'm going to tell you, after listening to everybody's list, my 5 haven't changed. It's just trying to figure out where I'm putting 4 and 5, which one's first and which one's second. And I really love the prequels, and I really love the original movies. And disclosure, as you both know, I haven't watched the trilogy that they call the end of the trilogy. I can't do it.
the whatever.
Yeah. So, I have a couple honorable mentions. One of them, two of them are Han Solo and Princess Leia. They are 2 of my honorable mentions. Harrison Ford changed the way I looked at certain types of characters in movies. And he was one of those actors that between Indiana Jones and Han Solo, it was just amazing. But I was drugged. We should do a top top 5 for the prequel trilogy and a top 5 for the original trilogy, and then the expanded universe and all the animated deals. So we can narrow, because I have more than 5 characters, but the problem is when you ask about my top 5 characters from all of the live action stuff, I really like a lot of the new TV shows. I do.
I feel like I just gave my top 5 prequel trilogy characters.
And
so just copy and paste.
My other honorable mention at this point would be Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
And because I like what they've done in the TV shows, but I wasn't as excited about what they did with Boba Fett as I was with little Boba Fett in the prequels and Boba Fett in the original movies. Boba Fett was just this mysteriously cool character, and he had a cool ship, and he's like gets him, and he's like, he's worth something to me, and Vader turns and is like, well, you'll be compensated when they're freezing him in Cloud City, and that's just some stuff that when they first introduced him, like, who is this guy? This is crazy. So those are my 3 honorable mentions: Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Boba Fett. And Princess Leia to me is just horribly underused after the fact. But that's for a whole different video. So my number 5. So 4 and 5 for me, I'm not sure who I want to put 5 and who I want to put 4. So 5 is General Grievous. Huh?
That was my next guess.
I'm actually surprised.
I think I know who number 4 is, if not
General
number 1. Go ahead.
Grievous.
5 is General Grievous, and 4 is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's prequel Obi-Wan Kenobi. I loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. Alec Guinness was amazing. I'd seen him in a couple other movies, and I thought he was cool. But he was so there and gone. But he's such an influence through the original trilogy for Luke that I'm like, this guy is amazing. And in the prequel trilogy, you couldn't not be an Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. I loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. And
that's what I've been
as
saying.
he is not like in the rankings of like dueling and all this other stuff, he wasn't as great as a swordsman as Count Dooku or Anakin or Mace Windu. But he found a way. He found ways to be triumphant. I mean, in each time he found ways to get the job done.
I think that, when the Anakin that's laying on the lava shore would disagree with you on the swordsman side.
I would agree. Well, that was.
You do have to admit that Obi-Wan did have a leg up on Anakin.
Yeah,
He had the high ground.
So General Grievous, in these movies, I really like the villains. The villains and the way that the whole plot that the Emperor Palpatine brought out in the Phantom Menace, this villain that wasn't really it was hiding in plain sight, and all the different pieces. The thing about Grievous, he was different. He was a completely unique character for Star Wars at the time. You had droids and you had people, or aliens or humans and droids. But Grievous was like this character, this other alien race character that had been all messed up, and they had to repair him with robotics. And he was like Darth Vader before Darth Vader. He had killed all these Jedis and had all the different arms and the lightsabers, and he was just, to me, when I saw the prequel, I was like, wow, he's freaking cool. And it seemed like if they had just unleashed him and Palpatine wasn't playing both sides against themselves, he probably would have been a lot more successful than he was. Plus, he put all these droids that could barely walk in a straight line and not shoot each other. But Grievous and Dooku were that I would have liked to have seen an actual duel with Grievous versus other Jedis, and not just because that fight with Obi-Wan near the end when they're actually fighting, that got so far beyond just a lightsaber duel, because Obi-Wan ends up shooting him with a blaster in the heart. But that whole fight scene in Attack of Clones to me really was until you get to the climax with Anakin and
You mean,
Obi-Wan fighting.
You mean Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, until you get to the climax. No, in Attack of Clones, that battle between. Oh no, is that in Revenge of the
Revenge
Sith?
of the Sith,
It
yeah.
is Revenge of the Sith. So, and until you get to the battle with Obi-Wan and Anakin, that is like probably the fight where you really get to see Obi-Wan, and he's surrounded by all these people, and you're like, well, he's in trouble, and he still pulls it out. So that's why I put Obi-Wan ahead of Anakin, ahead of
Grievous.
Grievous, and Grievous is a little bit behind him, but for the film base, I those two are great. All right, number 3. Number 3 for me is Luke Skywalker. And there is not enough time to explain about all the reasons why I like Luke Skywalker. He was that nobody kid off a planet that ends up with a droid and goes to save the universe. Saves the princess, blows up the Death Star, and he becomes this Jedi that is just of like he starts checking boxes off. And a lot of that is not in the movie side, which is why we'll talk about some of that stuff later, but he ends up in all the different lightsaber forms you were talking about. He masters all of them. So he does things that even Yoda hadn't done, and he keeps mastering more and more and more, and just keeps building on it to the point where, if they had continued on the way we had hoped they had done, we would have seen a different Luke in the third trilogy. So Luke is there. Number 2 for me. Number 2 is R2-D2, and R2-D2 is the hero of every movie. He's, at least in the original 3 movies and the prequel trilogy, he saves somebody's ass, or the collective's asses, in every single movie in one way or another.
The collective asses.
Like, in the first movie, if it was not for him, they all die in the trash compactor. In Empire Strikes Back, he gets the hyperdrive working so they can get away from Vader at the end after they've already gotten their butts kicked. Return of the Jedi, he's got Luke's lightsaber. He's just, then in the first movie, Phantom Menace, he fixes the hyperdrive and all that when they're trying to get through the blockade and they get away. Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones. What was the key piece in there? It has to be when they're captured and they're on Geonosis, and they've been captured in Geonosis, and he's working something out in there.
He saved Padme. He saved
Obi-Wan and all of them. Yeah.
I believe I think he saved Anakin.
Padme. And then Revenge of the Sith. It's just art. And then later in Legends, because it's not even canon anymore, he's basically of the 2 droids. Bail Organa wipes 3PO, but R2's never wiped. So there are times in different stories where he has everything. He knows, he's got the whole story. He knows everything, and he fills different people in at different times. And it's like, he's this droid that just kind of wanders around through, this person has him, and then he hangs out with this person, he hangs out with that person, and only diverges information when he feels that it's necessary. And he's pretty awesome. And my number 1 is Darth Vader, but it's Anakin Darth Vader, because you can't have one without the other. They're the same character.
They are?
Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. So Darth Vader is it. And for the same reason that Bone likes Anakin Skywalker, I like him the same reason. The amount of turmoil that he goes through. He loses his mother. He's a slave. He's saved. He can't save his mom. He has the issue with the Sand People. Then he comes back. He marries Padme in secret. He keeps having these reoccurring dreams from the Force that he's going to lose his wife, and he wants to, whatever he has to do to save his wife. He feels like the Jedi Council is moving against him. He's got this crazy father figure in Palpatine that's just playing everything against him and pitting him against the Jedi while he's still trying to do the right thing. And everything is driving around him trying to protect the ones he loves. And he's manipulated and used in such a horrible fashion. And then later he becomes Vader. And like we've said, greatest villain of all time. I can't think of it. I could come up with a couple villains I like, but no one that is on a level with Vader. And the whole point of the storyline was the rise, fall, and the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So at least in the original Star Wars, the story is about Anakin Skywalker. It's about Darth Vader, and for me, they sold me. I bought all in on Anakin Skywalker, and he was the guy for me. And I that's my top 5.
I'm amazed that Darth Maul did not make it in an honorable mention
In an
or
honorable
anything
mention,
because
anything.
I know how much you love Darth
I
Maul.
was shocked that I was not. I did not know you were such a General Grievous fan.
I like Grievous.
Can I get my
Honorable mentions, and then, but I'd let real quickly.
Go ahead.
No, you do that real quickly because then from there, I have another thing I'd like to ask y'all.
The Grievous thing,
No, from the Anakin thing, I'd like to ask
but
you a question.
the General Grievous thing for me was because of how influential the original trilogy was. I could have just thrown 5 original trilogy members out there, but I really like the prequels. And when I go to watch movies, generally when I watch a Star Wars now, you would be surprised at the 2 or 3 movies that I gravitate to watch. The one I watched the most is Rogue One. It was very difficult not to put Jyn Erso in this list. Right. And number 2 is Revenge of the Sith. Because of Obi-Wan and General Grievous and all of these things that were going on and the stuff in the ships. And the beginning when they get on there and they kill Dooku and they're on the bridge and Grievous is like, oh, well,
it was really the
you.
penultimate,
Out the window I go and you guys are going to die.
It was really the penultimate, movie because it had all of these strands. That
There's
had to be
no
kind of
way
tied
to
together.
do a top 5 and leave some aspect of Revenge of the Sith out of it.
All right, your honorable mentions.
So my first honorable mention would be Obi-Wan Kenobi, and for all the reasons that you all mentioned. It's like even Sir Alec Guinness's performance. The guy was a Shakespearean actor. He was just amazing. The second honorable mention would be Chewbacca, because when we were kids, everybody wanted to be Chewbacca because droids don't rip people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Okay, and then my third honorable mention is whatever that creature is that's in the trash compactor. Because if you've ever been in a swimming pool with the vacuum hose rolling around like, it's got me to shoot it, goddamn. It's like, so whatever that, I know it has a name, but I don't remember what it's called. But anyway, go ahead.
So I want to ask you this, all right? There was a little bit of some what's the word? A report did at least some was it not flash, but what's blowback or something like that. In the trailer for Ahsoka, Dave Filoni said that Anakin Skywalker was the greatest Jedi of all time. And it was reported apparently that there was some sort of division. Some people just, there was, they reported as like, there was sparking arguments. I think that's a little over the top as far as like everyone has their opinion. And so someone says something definite, someone else disagrees. I don't think it's a big deal, but there was sort of a little sort of thing that came out of that where people were, kind of disagreeing with him and having debates over, Anakin Skywalker being the greatest Jedi of all time. And I think that there's a couple ways to come at it. So I'd like to see if y'all I'd like to see if y'all agree if he's the greatest Jedi of all time, and then I'd like to ask some questions.
I can't. Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, so greatest Jedi of all time? No, I don't think so. And the reason for it, whether it was right or wrong, he never made the master status as a Jedi. And there were certain things in the Jedi side that he never did, and he never mastered. And then he fulfilled so much more on the Sith side, and he was a Dark Lord of the Sith, and he was a master as a Sith. I because of legends and canon and other things, I can't even put him in the top 5 Jedis of all time.
Right. Okay. So all right. So
But
this
that
is
would
just
be
a real
me.
quick reaction.
Let me say. So I would say real quickly that any Jedi that burned the Jedi Temple and murdered Padawans cannot be considered the greatest Jedi.
Okay. So that's what a lot of people said. Oh, he killed children. Here's the deal. I think that you have to define the greatest. I think if one was saying he's the most powerful Jedi of all time, there's an argument there because he is incredibly powerful. But I do think that, and this is where because a lot of people disagree, and I agree with the people who are kind of disagreeing. It doesn't have to. I think it's ridiculous to get crazy, but is that the Jedi are a very specific thing. Like this is the Jedi. This is what they believe, and so if you don't really follow along with what they believe in, you can't be really high tier in what they are. So the Jedi are very specific religion. So he wasn't really there was a lot that he didn't agree with, just like you couldn't say Qui-Gon was there's a lot he disagreed with. People who have issue and don't really gravitate as a Jedi and grab onto that sort of point of view, who are kind of separated from that, they don't really reach those higher tier status to me. But what's interesting, because I was thinking, because I was watching Star Wars there, he was talking about it, and he agrees actually. But one of the interesting things he was talking about was like, because people mentioned that, well, he killed children. And he's talking about all these things, but he was talking about, well, but at the end he was redeemed, from his son. But I was sitting here going, okay, but listen, here's the thing. If you measure it by our morals, like, okay, so if you killed a bunch of children, but you didn't kill your son, that doesn't matter. You're a child murderer. It doesn't but he does love his son. Okay. Yeah, but you still killed children and you're responsible for that. And there's no redemption, so like that interesting side, but it was like interesting side where they were talking about what you were talking about earlier about the redemption. It's like, there's a side to it where it is a story and you're understanding this redemption, but there's no way to be redeemed enough just because, what Luke proves that there's still some good in him, but he's not a good guy.
No.
And I personally disagree with him, even personally, with him being able to become a Force ghost, because I don't think you should get that ability when you've done some really, really bad things. And then the thing about him is he just, it's overnight. Like, he just decides, he just bows down in front of the Sith Lord, and then the next day he goes and just kills these children, and it's like, because I gotta save my wife, man.
Is it the next day, or is it like 5 minutes after?
It's the next scene.
It's like 5 minutes after. It is like 5 minutes after. But it's like, so to me, you can't really. If you're measuring by our standards of morals, it is really insane to be like, yeah, but in the end, his son did redeem him. Okay, he didn't kill his son. Yeah, okay, that doesn't make him a good guy.
There's a bigger argument for Luke Skywalker being the greatest Jedi of all time over his dad, and I know they believe that Anakin was the chosen one. Well, he was supposed to bring balance. Well, he balanced it out. There was Palpatine and Vader, and there was Yoda and Obi-Wan. Perfect balance until later when they added all these other people. That
he is the one. If you ignore. He's in movie wise, he's the one who did kill the Emperor. So they say he eventually did balance it out. But the aspect is, I think that's true because of what Luke did, how far he went, and because realistically, all of the things that were wrong with the Jedi, that caused Anakin and all of that, he learned those lessons and fixed that, and he wasn't so caught up, because their whole story was how they got caught up in their smoking their own stuff,
Stash.
their own stash. What is it you said about the other guy drinking his own Kool-Aid or whatever it is? They got caught up with no, yeah, we're the best, we're the Jedi-ants, whatever, and they got to go too far into the idea that they're, it's just complete lack of emotions, all these things, and they kind of led to this downfall. And Luke learned from those lessons and understood that there's this sort of balance. But I don't want this to get too long. But I was just curious if y'all had agreed with that or not. So, all right, this is great. Tough. I was a little surprised a couple times there. Not too surprised at the end, but with a little bit. The General Grievous did surprise me a little bit.
I just have trouble really picking any of the evil characters. It's not something I could do easily.
Yeah, 'cause you're a good guy.
Especially General Grievous. Grievous.
Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Oh, we're on Spotify now too.